Welcome back to the Defiant Spirit. I'm Dr. Baruch HaLevi, also known as B, and I appreciate you tuning in for this important conversation, which is men and mastery. Your why is bigger than your work. So, why am I talking about this? First of all, why this continued conversation around why? I began it, I've talked many episodes, but I sort of revamped, re-upped my podcast here, the Defiant Spirit, around why, and this question: why haven't you killed yourself? This why is at the heart of everything I do, and frankly, everything you do. Why haven't you killed yourself is a profound question, and it's not about suicide. My teacher and mentor, Dr. Viktor Frankl, would ask his patients. He was a psychiatrist, neurologist, and founder of logotherapy, meaning-centered psychotherapy. And he would ask his patients on the very first meeting, why haven't you killed yourself? So I did a podcast around this. Did a blog around this a few weeks back. You can, read or listen. But essentially, why he asked this question was because all he knew about this person walking through his door is one thing: they haven't killed themselves. He may not known, where they're from, what their presenting issues were, what they're struggling with, but he did know they hadn't killed themselves. And by that fact, because it's the ultimate choice we all have, and he certainly dealt with this question on a daily basis during his 4 years in the Holocaust. He talks about it was the ultimate question one had to ask and answer on a daily basis. Why don't I kill myself? And you better come up with your why, your reasons. It would be understandable in the Holocaust in that context. But truthfully, life is not that different. Sure, we're not oppressed in the same way, but we're all facing the same fate, right? You're going to die. You're going to suffer. Every single person you know and love is going to die, hopefully after you, but sometimes before you. This thing is really, fucking hard. And so, yes, you could choose to leave, but you haven't, and don't. Keep on choosing life. He just wanted to know why. What's that why? And he would start drilling down into the bedrock of that why. It could be something seemingly mundane, ordinary. It could be 1,000 things, and it probably is. And it could be the extraordinary, and will always lead to that. But he would start very simply with one stake in the ground, one why, and he would build from there. So I'm not repeating this podcast. You can listen to the other one. I did a mini version and then a longer form version with my son Yehuda. So check those out. But this one is about men. See, men need to ask this and answer this more than women. They just do. Why do I say that? Not because women don't benefit from knowing their why and articulating it, but because far less women kill themselves than men. 80% of suicides are men. And then you start getting into what I call passive suicide, which is substance abuse, disproportionately men, addictions, disproportionately men. So, you start going down this path and you realize real quickly that men are killing themselves actively or passively at epidemic, staggering rates. There's benefit, of course, to women hearing this and listening to this, but I am here to give a new voice and a new perspective to men. That's why I'm focused on my work, ManUPrising, helping men rise up in the second half of life. In fact, I've heard of 2 suicides this past month of men in the second half of life who had seemingly had everything but killed themselves. And I want to address it. I want to get into it. I want to give opportunities for all people, but especially men, to dig in, to drill down into their why. Now, we're going to take a different twist today, and it's about men and their work, because in a ManUPrising peer group, and I hope you'll either join one or send your man to join one, they're transformative. I think we're launching our 5th group. We plan on just continually scaling up with that. And you can learn more at manuprising.org for men's second half of life. You define that however you want, roughly 40 and north. And we have our fifth group, 9 guys in each group. So that's 45 guys who are just digging deep into their why. What's my why? And one of the things you see in the peer group is during our update session, it's very structured. We have a 15-step agenda. It's borrowed from another peer group model called EO, Entrepreneurs Organization. And it's proven, it's tried, it's true, it's amazing. One of the things you do in there is you go around for 5 to 7 minutes and you give an update on your life, just sharing the highs and lows, the peaks and valleys. And there are 4 buckets that we divide that into. You talk about personally what's going on. That can be anything spiritually, it can be physically, whatever it is you want to define as personally, highs and lows. Then you go into family. Pretty obvious. Guys spend a good chunk of their time on the personal and on the family. There's community. That's sort of everything out in the world. Could be friends, could be actual community, could be however you define that, going off to the big world. And then there's work. I would say, if I were to sort of allocate time spent on each of these buckets, I would say most men spend 30 to 50% on work stuff, and then maybe 30% on personal, the rest on family, and very little on community. Work is number one, right? You just get into it. You hear it over and over again. Personal, family, also up there high, but work is just dominant in a man's life. So one of my favorite examples of this, and as part of the ManUPrising curriculum, is you go to a cocktail party, you walk up to a guy, and you say, "Hey, my name's B. What's your name?" Right? It's the first question you ask. The second question that a man, not always a woman, gets asked is, fill in the blank. What's the second question you asked? What do you do? Right? What do you do? Now, if you ask most women that, they may fill in the blank with their profession, but they may not. It's not a given. I've done this. I've done this hundreds, thousands of times. First of all, it's not even necessarily the second question you would ask a woman. I don't know if this is all cultural. I think there is some biological in there, but a man is defined by what he does, and what he does is defined by what he does for a living. That's why when I ask a guy this question, I never say, "What do you do?" I say, "What do you do for a living?" Because I do lots of things and I don't get paid for them. But somehow, at least in the first half of life, that doesn't work its way into my psyche, into my self-definition. Because for a man, self-worth and net worth get bound up very quickly at a young age. And we define ourselves by what we do. It can be how much money we make, but that is a result of what we do professionally. It can also be accomplishments, achievements, right? What we've created. And that's another piece of this. But for sure, certainly halfway through life, a man his identity revolves around what he does for a living. It's by far, certainly, the most time he allocates in his day is to his work. How many guys do I know that work 8 hours a day? Not that many. I mean, maybe even if they're punching in a clock 8 hours a day, which I don't know too many guys who are punching the clock or working 8 hours a day. There's a lot of work that goes in before, that goes in after, that goes in on the weekend, even if he's not going to the office. How many women do I counsel who talk about their husbands? They bring their work home with them, or when they're home, that's like their mind is at work. How many guys do I talk to who struggle with this, losing themselves, their identity to their work? I am what I do. Now, the guys that I tend to work with, by and large, have achieved mastery in on their professional journey, at least at this midway point and onwards in life. Not everybody, not all the time, or maybe like me, you achieve mastery. I achieved mastery as a congregational rabbi. I just did. Top of my game, 42 years old, walked away. And then I was a novice. But I had still sort of tasted that and defined myself by that. And even when I was rebuilding for the past now 10 years and back to mastery, I believe, it was all about work. It was all about my why at work. So how many guys do I talk to who know their why when it comes to work, the vast majority. And if it's not their particular job, it's their profession, it's their vocation, which they define as how they get paid. It's not what vocation means, by the way. Vocation comes from the Latin vocare, which means your voice. It's how you express yourself in the world. Unfortunately, most of us just talk about how we get paid for that or don't get paid for that. So a man defines his worth by his net worth. He defines his doing by how he gets paid, and he defines his mastery by what takes place at the office or out in the trenches of bringing home the bacon. And how many guys do I talk to who then can tell me their why when it comes to professional? Tell me their why when it comes to what they've mastered, in that space in their life. But then when I ask them to expand their why, their purpose, their reason for being, when it comes to home life, when it comes to inner life, personal lives, all those other buckets that you share about in a peer group, community, right? They have no freaking clue. They've never thought about it. They've never really even worked it into their why, to their purpose. I mean, yeah, they have in abstract terms. Guys will, as I say, start cherry picking Hallmark cards at the Hallmark store. My why is to be a good dad. It's to be a good husband. It's to be a good son, blah, blah, blah. That's meaningless. That's like Miss America. Is that still a thing? I hope it's not. Standing on the stage saying, I want world peace, right? It's like, that's just so big, it's meaningless. And life is lived in nuance. If it's not nuance, it's not real. It's just pie in the sky. It's world peace. How many guys do I talk to who have even considered having a vision, mission, purpose, a why statement when it comes to their life? I shared on my son's podcast, I don't think I've ever shared it publicly, my why statement. My why statement is 4 paragraphs long. It incorporates sort of professional aspects, but it does not revolve around my profession. It revolves around my mission, my purpose, my why as a man, as a husband, as certainly a guide, but here in an abstract way to inspire, and then drilling down into the ways that I do that, and then the things that I will settle for, what I will not settle for, what I stand for, what I don't stand for, what I will do with the time I have here. Right? That's your why. So many guys define it by one slice of the pie. And there are so many challenges with that, problems with that, devastating consequences with that. So let's talk about one. One of them is the guy, and I have counseled hundreds of guys, so you can just, fill in the blank with the guy who has achieved mastery. He goes to work and he's the man. People get out of his way. They call him. They just would love to get him on the phone, but they can't get access because he's not so easy to get to. Everything he does, everything he says is wanted, is needed, is respected, is revered. And then he goes home. And at home, he is a second-class citizen. He's a second-class citizen because he's there a fraction of the time that he's at his office. He's outsourced his role to his wife, to his partner, to others. His wife, his kids know this. They feel this. Maybe it was never said, but that's how it's experienced. It's experienced by them that this isn't his ultimate priority. We say it is. I don't care what a man says. I care what they do, right? Don't tell me your number one value is family while they occupy very small bucket in your update at a ManUPrising Peer Group. It's just not true. It's important to get honest. Not everything is number one. And I talk to a lot of guys who believe their number one value is their marriage, is their children, family, and that is not how they allocate their resources. There's a saying in the Talmud that says, you can tell who a man really is by his kos, his kis, and his ka'as. His ka'as is his anger. You want to see what a person is really like? Look at them when they're angry. And that shows you authentic slice of who they are. You want to know what a man's like? Look at him with his kos, his cup, what he's like when he gets drunk. That'll show you a snapshot into a man, into the man in who he truly is. And lastly, his keys, his pocket, how he spends his money. You want to know what a man is all about? Look at how he spends his money. I was talking to a guy who's in a peer group, not a ManUPrising peer group, and he shared with me that the most intimate conversation he and his brothers in the peer group ever had was they had to create a business plan and present it to the group. And in that business plan, they had to show their financials. Every single dollar accounted for in their personal and professional life. And he said it was the most vulnerable and intimate and humiliating and empowering experience of his life. Because you want to know who a man really is, look at how he spends his money, how he presents his money, all of that kind of stuff. So that's, a little digression around don't care what somebody says, care what they do, care where they allocate their time and their resources. Now, a lot of guys will sit on these chairs behind me and say, B, it's all about my family. I got to pay the bills. I got to provide for them. That's true. That's called responsibility. I value that. I try to do that myself. And then it becomes bullshit because, moving the decimal one more spot probably is diminishing returns. And then we start playing what I call the decimal chase as guys. We start convincing ourselves that just one more decimal, one more digit, right? I'll make 6 digits, I'll be happy. I make 7 digits, I'll be happy. So, I need more of the high sevens to make sure it's generational wealth. At some point, we're deluding ourselves where we're heading down the decimal chase, just chasing it down the slippery slope into hell. There comes a point when we have to go to ourselves, when we go to our mirrors and look at ourselves and be honest. Why am I doing this? Because at work, because of my profession, I feel like I have mastery. I know what I'm doing, but I go home and I don't know what I'm doing. I don't even know how to participate, how to contribute. So the work I'm doing with guys a lot now, middle age, is not just helping them. I can do executive, coaching work, but that always leads back to home. You can't have mastery in one area of your life while failing or feeling like a failure in other areas. And so it always spills back over to their home. And we start to work on mastery at the dinner table, what that means, how to participate, how to reclaim your space, your role in the home, reallocating those resources over there. And it's powerful to see these men step back into their power, put themselves back at the center of their families' lives. Frankly, it's not only better at home, it becomes better at work, because what we usually find is too much energy has been invested at work and it's actually disempowering, right? We've created this culture of dependency over at work. And usually you back out of there, you reallocate your resources to other areas like home, and things just start going better. You start getting back to a place of sustainability, a holistic, organic rhythm to your life. Reallocating time to personal, right? So many guys have risen to the top in their professions or work by neglecting their themselves. So personal is a bucket, in a ManUPrising peer group that we got to tend to. Personal could be certainly physical, making sure that you are approaching your physicality differently in the second half of life. Again, that's my area of focus, really. Guys, at this stage, you can't just power through things anymore. There are consequences to 10, 12-hour days. There are consequences to not getting enough sleep. There are consequences to not eating well, high cholesterol, or too much sugar intake, etc., not enough exercise. Of course, there are consequences in the morning of life, the first half of life, but you can power through, you can get by. But then you get to the second half of life, and it's not just about quantity, it's about quality of life. So we part of our, my coaching work with these guys and curriculum is to factor in physical wellness, self-care as an act of love, self-love, love to others. I use the analogy all the time of men and women, running around the periphery of their lives, taking care of others as an act of selflessness. That's not selfless, that's selfish, because you can do it for a while until you drop dead of a heart attack, or lose your connection and get divorced, or estrange your kids because you're over here running around taking care of certain people and not taking care of the kids. And I don't just mean physically, but emotionally, mentally, time wise. And it collapses. So we got to get back to the center of our lives, stand at the center and be strong there. And that means taking care of ourselves. That means saying no to other people and saying yes to ourselves, not as an act of selfishness, as an act of self-centering, putting ourselves back at the center of our lives. That is a man's duty, to be at the center of his life, not over in one bucket or the other bucket or out on the periphery, the center, with equal access, equal energy to all aspects of our lives. It has to be spiritual. You can define spiritual however the hell you want. I don't get hung up on the labels. I don't really care what the form is. It can be your Christianity, your Judaism, your Buddhism, your Hinduism, your whatever ism. It can be no formalized religion. It can be an abstract sense of spirituality. But what it can't be is bullshit abstraction in the sense of I'm spiritual, not religious. And then I start pushing you. What does that mean? It means I'm spiritual, not religious. I believe in something more. Okay, again, I don't care what you believe. I care what you do. So how does that manifest? That's like me going to Ariella on her birthday and saying, I love you, dear. I didn't get you anything. I didn't make time for you today. I didn't allocate any resources, but I love you. You know that, right? She'd put her high heel up my ass. And as she's going off to have a wonderful celebration of her birthday alone. It's not good enough. How do you allocate resources to your spirituality? Are you sitting in meditation if you're spiritual, not religious? If you're religious and you say you're Christian, are you praying? Are you going to church? Are you, giving? Are you tithing? Right? That's how I measure a person's religiosity as a Jew. You don't get to say I'm Jewish, I'm religious, but I don't do anything. I don't keep kosher. I don't observe the Sabbath. I don't go to the synagogue. I don't even belong to a synagogue, but I'm Jewish. I don't even know what that means. It's worthless. What do you do? How do you express it? So spiritual, are you sitting in meditation? Are you tapping into something deeper? Are you moving your body through, a yoga practice, which is a spiritual practice? What are you doing that's spiritual? Show me the money. Show me, don't tell me. Not for me, I don't give a shit. It's for you. It's so that you can live a life of authenticity and integrity and in alignment with your core values. So that personal bucket, we've talked about, yes, work bucket is always covered. And then there's this personal bucket of mind, body, spirit. Mind, how are you filling up your mind? What are you reading? It can't just be business books or business literature or industry related stuff. That's utilitarian. That's transactional. That's just using material to get ahead in business. What are you reading that has no direct consequence to your business, that is just to make you a better man, right? Are you reading Man's Search for Meaning? Read that one. That's an important book for every person, every man in particular, to understand the necessity of your why. Are you reading books on becoming a better man, becoming a better human being? Are you reading books that are just beautiful and relaxing? And I just read a book on Bo Jackson's life, something about the myth, I forget, something like the last mythical American or something. I don't know. The last hero, whatever it is, it's Bo Jackson. And I just wanted to hear something inspiring about a man who faced incredible adversity and powered through it. Truly amazing. So how are you filling yourself up? A great man named Warren Rustan. I read his book. I don't remember the name. He's a mentor to some friends of mine. He has a principle that I've adopted and I use with my guys called 10-10-10. Every morning, 10 minutes of reading, something constructive, something that makes you a better man. 10 minutes of spiritual practice, could be meditation, or for me it's meditation, and 10 minutes of journaling. 10-10-10. Sometimes I do 20-20-20. Sometimes I do 5-5-5, but that's a morning discipline, and I make sure that I do that to put energy into that bucket of the spiritual. So the 4 buckets, which is really what this is shaping up as. If you want mastery in your life as a man, you got to have 4 buckets. And that's work. Yes, keep on mastering your work, but then reallocate resources to personal, to family, to spending time, to investing time, and not just quantity, but quality. Great teaching in the Torah. Moses is called up to the mountain to receive the 10 commandments by God. And it says, I forgot the Hebrew totally, but come up to me vayesham, and be there, it says. And God says this to Moses, and the commentators ask, why does it say come up to me and be there? It sounds redundant. It's not redundant, because you can come home from work and not be there. You can be with your spouse on a date and not be there. You can be driving your kids to carpool and not actually being there. Being there is the key to a quality life. It isn't quantity. At a certain point, I have older kids now. It's not quantity. I don't get the same quantity as I did when they were little. That ship sailed and I missed out on a lot, but I'm not missing out now. Because I always think of this idea of being there, and I'm trying to be there all in with them, with Ariella, in the time that I have left. And so making sure there's allocated resources in that bucket. And last but not least, and this is a big one, this is the empty bucket in a ManUPrising peer group. Very little is talked about in the community side of things. It's almost like a leftover, as opposed to being central. We need to get back to mastery in those other things, which is beyond personal, beyond family, beyond work. And I put in this one friends. I don't think it is for women. I think that's included in the personal. But for men, friends get relegated to the side, because in the climb, in the morning of life, we are transactional. We're, building our book of business. And so friends become the acquaintances, who's around us. Yeah, we maintain contacts with high school buddies and college buddies, and we have poker buddies, and we have golf buddies, and we have hunting buddies, but they're buddies. I don't consider that a friend unless you go deep, unless you tell them the truth, unless they know about your marriage and your struggles or your financial situation, or, your illness or your fears, your hopes, your dreams. Like, just getting on bullshit banter on a text thread is not true friendship. Fine, they're buddies. But men get to a second half of life and they realize they don't have friends, not really, not many. And so allocating energy, resources to the community, to the friends side of the equation. How many guys come to the ManUPrising peer groups because they realize they don't have those guys? The guys at ManUPrising, I say they're going to carry my casket. I've known guys for 50 plus years. They're buddies. They are not my brothers. They're not deepest level friends. But the guys who I meet every month, and I've only been doing it with them for a year, they are my brothers. So really thinking about mastery, or getting back to mastery when it comes to friends, when it comes to community. We live in an era where most people don't belong to synagogues and churches, not like yesteryear. Fine, I don't either, by the way. I don't find any connection to any particular religious institution. But I have community outlets. I have been building it with ManUPrising. That is really my community. That is my church. That is my synagogue. That is my growing center, and allocating more and more resources to build that community. But we need community, organizations, volunteering, giving back. Viktor Frankl calls this self-transcendence. We have to have something in that bucket that is not about us, that is transcending ourselves, giving back to causes that are near and dear to us, and not just writing a check, right? I've seen that as not bucket filling, but it's a bucket checkbox. It makes me feel better. It does good. I'm not saying don't give the money, but don't think that fills your community bucket. That fills somebody else's community bucket. That's wonderful. Do that and fill your community bucket. Don't know what that means. You got to figure it out. So that's really the idea behind mastery, behind true mastery, not some narrow, thin slice of mastery that so many men I know are taught and live out and come to realize is anything but mastery. True mastery has to have all four of those ManUPrising buckets, where you come and you say, yes, I am maybe not mastery, but mastering my personal bucket and my professional bucket and my family bucket and my community bucket. And if you do that, you won't kill yourself. I know it with every ounce of my being, having had a father who killed himself, a grandmother who killed herself, having done funerals for too many people who've killed themselves, having counseled, coached, and guided thousands of people through all of life's crossroads. If you have mastery at this expanded level, then you will have all of these legs on a stool to support you, and one will be jeopardized at any given time. You may not have mastery in one area, but that's okay, because you have three other legs to lean on. And a stool with four legs is the only type of stool that won't tip over if one leg is lost. Four-legged stool of your life. And this is not about suicide. This is about your why. And knowing that your why is robust, it's dynamic, and it is resilient isn't about surviving, it's about thriving. Because at any given time in your life, you'll lean more on those other whys while you rebuild the stool that has been, the leg that has been lost. So this is about not surviving, this is about thriving. This is for all people, but men in particular, because too many men are killing themselves actively through suicide and passively through indirect, frankly, more subtle and cowardly oftentimes forms of suicide. Right? To not tend to your health over the next 20 years is simply suicide, prolonged. To neglect your relationships is just another form of suicide. It's passive, it's inactive. If you know a man who would benefit from this conversation, send them this way. If you know a man or are a man who would benefit by learning more about a peer group, jump over to manuprising.org or shoot me an email at be@defiantspirit.org, and I will connect them. I'll connect you. And we're doing this now in person here in Denver, Colorado, and virtually wherever you're hearing this, wherever you're watching this. We launched our first virtual group. We're going to be launching many more, and eventually we'll be coming to a city near you. But for now, those are the options, and it is a transformative experience that you get to start expanding what it means to have a why, to know your why, to live your why, right? To have true mastery in your life. As Viktor Frankl said, he who has a why can bear with any how. So discover your why, live your why, and leave your why as a legacy. And I will talk to you in the next podcast.